Hi there, and welcome to this training all about preparing your environment for an effective classroom as a special education teacher. We're going to take these next few minutes to talk through what all to include, what elements you should think about, uh, requirements of a classroom, and some other things that will enhance a classroom to better meet all of your learners' needs. So no matter if you are a first year teacher or if you're a seasoned teacher that just wants to learn some new tricks, or maybe you're starting a new position, this training will be helpful for you. Before we get too far into the training, make sure that you grab the guide. Here you can grab it right below the training video or in the email that you received today. Some of the sheets look like this on the left, where we will go through some organization bits and pieces, as well as a checklist to help you lay out your classroom for success. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. As we talk about the importance of a classroom, especially in special education, we want to make sure that we are minimizing distractions. We want to provide a variety of learning styles to meet all the needs of our learners that we get to work with. And we also want to foster a conducive environment for educational growth, but also engagement. So, three things we want to look at here is enhanced learning environment. We want to make sure that it's tailored to the students with disabilities and make sure that we are being mindful of that. Number two is to increase student independence. We want to make sure that there are visuals, that we are giving them the tools that they need so they are independent in our classroom from day one. We're going to go expand on that a little more a little later in this training. And then number three, in order to have an effective classroom setup, it also equals an effective behavior management system. And so structured environments where students know what to expect and where to find things helps reduce that anxiety as well as behavioral issues. So setting up a special education classroom is not just about organizing the space. It's about creating a nurturing environment where barriers are minimized and every day students can discover their path to independence and success. So let's chat a little bit about setting up an accessible space, especially in a special education classroom. There are four things I want you to consider here. And in these sections, they kind of have subsections, and we'll talk a little more about them in upcoming slides. But number one is your layout of your classroom, what all you want to include, as well as the flexible seating. As far as the layout, you want to make sure that the movement of the room flows, that you have elements that most of your students can use, but you also want to think about the mobility needs that all of your learners have so that you can make sure that it is conducive to the learners that you get to work with in the upcoming year. This may include considering students in wheelchairs or walkers. Maybe this even includes students that need areas to pace back and forth. So being considerate of those kinds of elements is definitely essential here as we are building and planning our environment for our learners. Tip number two is any kind of sensory considerations, and this is to help minimize that sensory overload and to provide that sensory input. Now, if you want sensory room ideas, whether you're creating a space in your room or you have the opportunity in your school to have a whole physical room, there is a blog post on my blog all about not only what are some items to include there, but also how you can help get funding for that. So you'll want to check that blog out for more ideas there. Number three is visual supports, making sure that we are building those language and auditory processing challenges and giving them opportunities to see, match, and experience all that they can in the classroom, whether that is where their morning stuff needs to go when they unpack. Where does their folder need to go? Do they have a bin for their lunchbox? Do they sit at a certain desk or chair, does their name or picture need to be on it? Where does the materials that you use throughout your day, whether that is Play-Doh, pencils, scissors, so many other things, where are those items? Are they labeled with words or pictures or maybe both, depending on your students' needs, so that you, your staff, and your students can all know and have those visual supports to help them all be successful and independent. And then number three is the use of technology and equipment. Here you're thinking about any kind of AT that students need for their IEP, whether that is like a Tobii Dynavox or an iPad that may have an app on it like TD Snap. It may even include equipment like a slant board or the pencil grips that they need to have better handwriting, or maybe it's just a Chromebook that they use in general ed. But also, if you have any kind of large whiteboard in your classroom, or like a smart board or Promethean board, um, any type of particular apps that you use, or circle time slides, but being familiar with what the needs are your students going to need to be independent with that Chromebook? Are you going to use it ever in your classroom, or is that all going to be in the general ed classroom? Are you going to have a circle time where you need a space large enough for all of your students to be around a smart board, or is it just going to be a few students at a time so you don't need a large space? Considering these things will all help you build out a classroom that is accessible for all. So while organizing your space is imperative, we want to take you through a step by step with your visuals so that you can be organized, but also help you and your team know where everything is. In addition to being accessible in your classroom, we want to make sure that we have elements of sensory friendly spaces. So we mentioned a little bit earlier whether you have just an area of your room or a whole sensory room. But the reason we want to be mindful of these sensory friendly spaces is that it reduces overwhelm and anxiety. It enhances and increases focus and engagement, and it promotes that inclusion and accessibility by having that time to decompress and calm down in a space that they feel safe in. So, creating a sensory friendly environment is key to supporting students with diverse learning needs. This includes considerations for lighting, noise, classroom materials that can reduce distractions and enhance focus. So when you're creating a space for learners, a few things to consider are these listed on the screen. You want to consider lighting. This can include any kind of covers for large um, overhead lights that you may have. There are some in my Amazon storefront to give you an idea if that's something that you're looking for. But you also can do like rope lights or lamps, or have natural window lights if that is something that you have a lot of. I've been in classrooms where there's a lot of natural light, and I've been in classrooms where there's one very small window and natural light isn't an option. So we have to pivot and try other things. And that's where more of the lamps and the sparkle lights and the rope lights really work well to light up a space but don't bring overwhelm. In addition to lighting is furniture, making sure that we have the furniture in the room that we need for students to be successful, but that we don't overcrowd the room and the space, so that there are defined spaces and areas for our students while there isn't a lot of distraction and clutter. I know we've had to literally create a place elsewhere in our building for some of our adapted equipment because our room can get very full of pieces that we need for different learners on different journeys, whether that is physical or if that's sensory. And we don't always need it in the room, but we do need access to it depending on their current physical goals that we're working on. And so being mindful and kind of taking an audit at like the end of the day or the month. Hey, I haven't used this thing this whole month. Let's go put this in storage or in a closet, or like reducing down, but being intentional with the furniture that we have. We want to be able to use our furniture to define spaces, but not have more than we need. Next is materials. You want to make sure that you're taking an inventory of different things that you need for your classroom to be successful. And really, this has looked different year in and year out, depending on the different type of classroom that I've had and the different needs of the students that were in that classroom. So if you're a preschool special ed teacher, it's going to look totally different than maybe a kindergarten through third grade self-contained teacher, which is going to look totally different than a resource teacher. However, knowing the different materials that thinking through the different materials you may need. You're going to need lots of baby wipes and setting up a changing station because you have a lot of learners this year that need changes. What cleaning supplies will you need? Or do you have a lot of writers this year and maybe you need like the fat chunky pencils, but you also need the golf pencils that are really small to help work on that fine motor. But then you need a lot of erasers because you know you're going to go through lots of those. So thinking through those IEP goals and the needs of the students according to the IEPs and knowing the materials that you're going to need or at least to get started. And I think you can never have enough like hot glue, laminating pouches, Velcro, twistable crayons. Those are all things that I feel like we use so much of. Regular glue sticks, coffee. But things that you use no matter the ability level, but you can like increase the rigor as needed or decrease it based on the student's needs that you have this year. And then lastly, the layout. What are all the different components that you want to include in your classroom for the upcoming year? So think about that wall color, flexible seating options, those quiet zones so that students can calm down and reset. These are all things to consider when laying out your classroom for it to be successful. So when designing an accessible classroom layout, start by ensuring a clear and wide pathway to accommodate the mobility of all your learners, ensuring that all students can move freely and independently. And as we pivot to focusing on each student's learning station, make sure that students' areas are easily accessible for multiple angles and that materials are within students' reach regardless of their physical abilities. Place adjustable furniture strategically to support various body sizes and needs and consider height of display and interactive elements to be universally reachable. So we want to make sure that we're mindful of the mobility and what all of the different pieces that we want to include in our classroom. So with these few tips, I want to make sure and encourage you to now make a print out or download on an iPad. I'd suggest like GoodNotes where you can write on it. The digital download. This is where you have a checklist, a place to brainstorm. You even have a floor plan that is included so that you can use a pencil or use your iPad and sketch out the different areas. If you're having a hard time deciding on what areas you want to include, make sure and look at that classroom checklist and the organization guide because those are things that are going to walk you through the different elements that you can include for your classroom. And some of the elements, just to kind of go over them quickly, is room scheme, technology, supplies, lighting, decor, labeling, and any kind of flexibility of what else you need in your classroom. So get in the Facebook group today. If you've not already joined, go ahead and join and share what is one strategy that you are going to use this year, what area you're going to organize or make better in your classroom. I would love to hear from you over in that Facebook group and make sure you're downloading that guide for today. Again, the downloadable resources are a great place, and they also have action steps of what you need to do next so that you can feel confident and successful in this area. And tomorrow we're going to tackle a brand new area. So this is day one of how to set up your special education in classroom and environment effectively. So make sure and download that guide so that you can have the roadmap, the floor plan, the organization checklist, and so much more, as well as those action steps. In addition, in the next few days, we're going to have the Exceptional Collective open back up, which is a community for special education teachers like you to get downloads, printables, coaching, as well as trainings every single month. So if that's something that you have been feeling like you need in your life this upcoming school year, we'd love to see you a part of that. And we'll give you more information later in the training, but we just want to let you know that that is coming. So if you have any questions, hop in the Facebook group, tag me or any of the admin, get into this workbook, draw out your plans for the year, and let us know how it's going and what all you're going to include over on Facebook in your classroom this year. And I can't wait to get in the next training with you.